But there's one team that just seemed to not give a damn about what the NFL got to say, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. Um, Last week, Jerry Jones and his son Stephen Jones both came out with statements that basically summed up how the Dallas Cowboys were going to enforce anybody that chose to protest the national anthem.
That requirement to send more to the league regarding the anthem issue was put on hold by both the league as well as the Players Association. And that was the net result of that. That was put on hold. It did not impact our position, my position relative to the Cowboys, just as the vote didn't impact that.
The Dallas Cowboys will toe the line. They will have toes on the line. They will stand for the national anthem. And Stephen Jones was in the interview, and someone asked how he felt, or did he believe that the players would actually abide with their toes on the line. And he said if they wanted to be Dallas Cowboys, they would. To me, that just signals that if anybody comes out and chooses to not stand for the national anthem, that the Dallas Cowboys would fire them, give them the boot. What do you think about the Dallas Cowboys and their stance in spite of what the NFL as a league has set as a precedent at this point in time?
I am not a Cowboys fan, never been a Cowboys fan. It is the Cowboys are supposed to be America's team, so I guess for all you guys that support the Cowboys, you fall in line with Jerry Jones. I think that he's been hypocritical considering the fact that he's allowed folks that have been allegedly accused of domestic violence, those that have done drugs. But for him he's basically give them second and third chances. But for him to be so headstrong on toe the line in regards to the national anthem and national anthem policy, I think it's very contradictory, and it's sad to see. It gives you that unfortunately it gives you that slave mentality. Yeah. Oh, one other thing. Shout out to social justice warrior Sean King.
Okay.
For retweeting. He did a retweet of Dale Hansen. Not sure if you guys have seen the Dale Hansen video, but Sean King, him being the social justice warrior that he is, he retweeted it, and it's a video that really speaks to this very topic, and I kind of ride with that video.
That's the older white guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of ride to that video and everything he said. But what I found interesting, to me, the story inside the story was the comments that Prescott made, but how he was attacked on Facebook by other activists and pro-black folks for his stance on saying that he would that his toe would be on the line, etc. I felt like that's the story inside the story, and I would be very interested in hearing also your thoughts on that.
Personally, I know that everybody don't feel the same kind of way about how they display their protests or how they feel about certain things. So personally, I don't have any problems with a person deciding when I'm here, I'm going to stand for the national anthem. The problem that I have is when you make your stance of what you're going to do and then you diminish or downplay or minimize other people's stance on it. So I think that people would have been okay if he had said something along the lines of, I'm not going to kneel for the protest, but I acknowledge that the protest is designed to do X, Y, Z, to be a challenge to police brutality and social injustices. So make your stance, but don't try to denigrate what other people are doing in their mode of having their constitutional right and speaking out for what they believe in. But in making that statement, though, you can tell between him and then his teammate Zeke Elliott, in answering those questions about this, you could tell that they already knew that whatever they was about to say were gonna come back and haunt him after that. Like Zeke was just so shook when he was delivering his answer to the question. It's crazy.
What are your thoughts on Jerry Jones?
Jerry Jones is about the dollars. So
Yeah.
the rumor is that Jerry Jones ain't as patriotic as this whole thing is making him look. Like, he really don't care about the national anthem. If you look last week, I think at one of the practices or something, they did the national anthem, and this clown still had his hat on. And his son told him about his hat. He got your hat on, and he looked at him and was like, I'm keeping my hat on. So this is not about patriotism or him really standing for, the national anthem and the flag. This is about how all of this impacts his bottom line. And in Jerry Jones's mind is that the bulk of the money that's being generated by the NFL is from people who are gung-ho on stand for the flag, be patriotic, and all those things. And of course, like we talked about in a previous podcast, there's a great deal of money that comes to the NFL from the Department of Defense to do these things. So in Jerry Jones's mind is that he stands to lose more money if he doesn't make this stance versus being on the right side of history, so to say. So he only care about the money.
So here's the deal with Dak Prescott from my perspective. So he's in his third year. He hasn't signed his big contract yet. He'll be signing his big contract after this season, how he performs this season. And I think that we actually had this conversation on the Flip Phone Society. I think that we as people and as in some cases black folks expect for these athletes to do things that we wouldn't even do at our 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
So the expectation is that Dak Prescott, who hasn't signed that lucrative deal yet, he's in the third year. This is the year where he essentially is going to make or break him. And we're asking him to go against the policy established by the organization he plays for. My question is how many of us go to work and essentially do the equivalent of what we're asking him to do? I really think that we need to, if this is an issue that we don't believe in, the national anthem and the things that Colin Kaepernick represented, which I fully stand with Colin Kaepernick and everything that he was doing. I think Michael Bennett said it best when he was on the Breakfast Club, and he basically said that if the viewership numbers went down, then those that watch the game that want the athletes to protest stopped watching the game and also took some responsibility and not put all ownership on the players, I think that you'll see a change to how the policy is being impacted. So I think it's a little selfish for us. When I say us, those that are viewers, to sit on the sideline and ask for a 23 or 24-year-old young man in Dak Prescott to go against an organization or the policy that's been put before him, but we won't even do it at our own jobs. And I'll close with this, BG. The only thing I would say is for Dak Prescott not allow his commentary to be leveraged for the conservative media. That's the only thing I would say.
And that's what I'm saying. And that's the problem with just going outside of what you're personally going to do. When you can stay in, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I stand for, I respect what those dudes are doing, you're good. But once you step outside of what I'm going to do and then you make it a moral issue where you draw the line and all those that are in opposition to me are somewhat being immoral, then you bring these problems on yourself. Then you get into this crossfire where you stand to lose not only your endorsements because you say the wrong thing, but then you also lose how people look at you in the community. Because at the end of the day, when it all said and done, he's going to be a black man dealing with black man issues. And I think Dez Bryant is really, representative of that as it relates to the Dallas Cowboy conversation. But the bigger thing is, this is what happens when we kind of fall out of line with the Constitution, what the Constitution allows. When an employer puts this box around you and really handcuffs you, it puts you in a lose-lose situation. If you decide to pray at this point in time, if you decide to kneel at this point in time, then we're going to fire you. Well, that's kind of a violation of just everything that we're entitled to. So it's just a lot of bad. It's a bad action that leads to another bad action. But to your point, he got to stay above falling into that trap. And and I think that's what hurts. I use hurt loosely, but when we look at black people as a whole and having these conversations, I think that's why a lot of people are upset, because the people that we look at as kind of the leaders and the celebrities, high profile people, are doing these things, and then we look around the next day, it's being politicized on Fox News. Is Dak Prescott is in favor of all these things when he was really doing it for himself, but now they're being used as pawns in this bigger game. And I was going to say something earlier about, man, it's just difficult. And, I'm praying for the people all the time, because as black people, we in this, like, we getting inundated with all of these messages and stuff, people trying to manipulate us, manipulate our stories and our minds, whether it be outside the community and even those close to us in the community. So we have to be on guard all the time about people playing these mental mind games with us. So people are upset because they feel like as a black quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, maybe his stance or whatnot should have been a little bit stronger. But at minimum, don't talk bad about the guys that have decided to sacrifice, their jobs or whatever for this whole national anthem protest.
You have to control your narrative, and to be quite frank, if you look at the guys of the NBA that are, all of those guys are standing for the national anthem, even though it's a different sport. But if you follow the lead of someone who I think is positioned themselves to be a front runner, as really someone who I'm really starting to admire even more and more. We'll talk about him later in the show. But if you follow the lead and the conversation of LeBron James, I think that you'll be able to navigate the narrative and not allow the outright to use your words to serve their purpose. And I think at the end of the day, Dak Prescott, I don't think he should get the flack he gets for the standing piece. I just don't want him to allow his voice to be used against him by those in the opposite arena.
But we got to be real though. Maybe he don't mind it being used in an opposite arena. Maybe he don't believe the same thing that we believe, even though he does have, he is a black man. I think he's biracial, isn't he? He's biracial. So even though he does have representation in the black community, just because of his DNA, he may not really be on that same side. So we do have to be open to that reality. But I will say, them boys making them statements, they was shaking like strippers in church on Sunday morning, because they knew that whenever them hit the airwaves, they were gonna catch hell, and catch hell they did. Black Twitter was on their ass.